You're welcome to another episode on Bioethics channel. Listen to a seasoned perspective on bioethics from an erudite and cerebral professor of philosophy from the Department of Philosophy, University of Lagos, Prof. Douglas.
Okay. From the expression bioethics, one can infer that it is a compound word comprising of bio and ethics. Bio is the root word of biology, and biology is the science that studies living organisms. Now, ethics is a branch of philosophy and simply defined as the normative science of behavior, the study of the principles for determining actions that are right and praiseworthy, actions that are wrong and blameworthy. Therefore, when you combine the two to arrive at bioethics, now you are talking about a discipline that comprises the application of fundamental principles of ethics in the analysis not only of biological phenomena, but also biomedical practices. So that you now discover that it is a discipline where those in the field of biology, the field of medicine, in other fields and disciplines related to these major areas, even biochemistry, are involved in discussion. So you can say bioethics is a very good example of interdisciplinary studies where philosophy or a branch of philosophy called ethics intersects with what you might call the biological sciences, including medical practices. I think that captures what I consider to be the essence of bioethics.
Thank you, Prof. And the second question here is, what is the role of bioethics in the preservation of human and environmental values?
In fact, given the current concerns about climate change, about how human activity has continued to degrade and in some cases irreparably destroy the environment. Bioethics is a very, very important discipline for this age. And I'll tell you why. Whether we like it or not, human beings are part of biological nature. And humans depend on the healthy functioning of the biological environment, not only for the continuation of the human species, but also, and very significantly, the continuation of the biodiversity in the planet. For decades, there have been serious scientific search to confirm whether there is life elsewhere. Of course, if you are aware of the size of the universe discovered by contemporary astronomy and cosmology, the probability that there is life elsewhere is reasonable. However, there is no hard fact to show that there is life elsewhere, and not only that, that intelligent life has evolved elsewhere. I'm not saying it did not happen. It could have happened. But scientists are still looking for irrefutable evidence of the existence of not only life, but intelligent life elsewhere. So you can see that this planet is very significant. It's like we are actually traveling on a rocky spaceship that contains all that is needed for not only the evolution of life, but also for the evolution of intelligent creatures. But remember again, human beings are not the only intelligent creatures. It's just that we are at the top of the food chain when you talk about evolution of living creatures on Earth. So, science have shown that human activities are destroying the planet. And bioethics is a discipline that is shining the light on not only the kind of damage that has resulted from human activity, but also articulating ethical principles that should guide the relation of human beings to the biotic community and to the environment in general. Because if we destroy this earth beyond a certain level, then we should wait for the extinction of Homo sapiens. So, bioethics is a clarion call on humanity to retrace its steps towards what you might call biological extinction. The extinction not only of Homo sapiens, but other species whose activities are not even responsible for the destruction of the environment. So it is very, very important that people should pay attention to the information, to the principles, to the theories that are being distilled from bioethics. Because if we don't, and we continue to live as if the earth is infinite in its capacity to actually repair itself, if we continue to take for granted the natural resilience of the biotic community, then I can tell you for free that we are marching steadily towards the destruction of the environment and, by implication, towards the destruction of living organisms, including Homo sapiens. So I can say without equivocation that indeed bioethics is very important in that regard. And again, it is also a study that shines the light on certain other practices. For example, the question of abortion, the question of LGBTQ. How do you interact with those with a different sexual orientation from those that have been taught traditionally in cultures and religions across the world? How do you interact with them? How do you see them? Do you define a human being solely by the person's sexual orientation? To what extent should the society tolerate LGBT individuals? Then you also look at the issue of transgender, changing of sex. You talk about plastic surgery, changing the anatomical features of a human being. There are serious ethical issues that arise from those practices. I mentioned abortion. Abortion has been a very serious bioethical issue that have been discussed by scholars across disciplines. The issue is abortion permissible? At what point can you say that a developing embryo is human? There are people who believe that humanity begins at the moment of conception. There are some people who say no, that it must reach a certain stage of development. There are people who even argue that you cannot call a developing fetus a human because it takes more than genetics. It takes more than being an embryo. There are other things that are involved in the concept of human beings, being human, sorry. So these are some of the very challenging issues that crop up in bioethics. So you discover that, therefore, that bioethics goes to the core of what it even means to be human, what it even means to be part of the biotic community. So it is very important that we pay attention, that people pay attention to the discussions, to the arguments that emerge from bioethics as a discipline, because it goes to the very core of the continued existence of not only human beings, but other organisms, because this planet does not belong to human beings alone. It belongs to every organism that is capable or that has evolved in the planet.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prof. And the next question is, what is the nexus between the revolution in science and technology and bioethics?
See, there has been this debate in philosophy of biology as to whether technology is value neutral. Some scholars argue that, look, by the time you bring the issue of value into technology, you are actually causing an unnecessary distraction. It's just like the kind of argument between the natural law theorists and the legal positivists. Okay. Now, you see, the nexus is strong because those of us in the philosophy of biology know that every scientific and technological innovation is like a double-edged sword. In other words, every innovation has both positive and negative outcomes, particularly when you talk about the well-being of human beings, of the organisms, the environment in general. Therefore, it is fundamental that ethical principles must be used to provide guardrails for technological development so that humanity will not develop technology that will turn into a Frankenstein monster that will go ahead to destroy its creators. So I don't subscribe to the view that technology is neutral. For me, every human activity has ethical implication, and technology cannot be an exception. We must ask the question, what is this technology for? What impact will it have on human beings? First, on the environment and other creatures that have a right, a fundamental moral right, if you ask me, to be in this planet. Because for me, as long as a creature, as any organism has evolved in this planet, it has a right to be here. So the nexus is this. I can explain it better with an analogy. When a scientist is working in the laboratory, or a technologist is working in the laboratory, developing a particular drug or a particular machine, whether he or she knows it, there's a presumption that this drug, this machine will be good for human welfare. So you can see that whether the scientist or technologist is aware or not, his or her activity is morally, is ethically impregnated. Because if he or she decides that this weapon or this medicine is going to cause irreparable damage, even if he or she goes ahead to develop it, there are regulatory agencies that will put a stop to the manufacture either of that medicine or that weapon. You can see, for example, nations have nuclear arms, but there are strict guidelines that it should not be used. And you will now discover that, assuming that those who are developing those nuclear weapons have taken the ethical dimension seriously, maybe nuclear weapons would not have seen the light of day. In fact, Albert Einstein, one of the foremost physicists of all time, whose work in theoretical physics was part of the steps that led to the manufacture of the atomic bomb, regretted it. He said he would have preferred to be a wristwatch maker than to find out that his theory was instrumental in developing the atomic bomb. So you see that the nexus, therefore, between philosophy of technology, philosophy of science and technology, and bioethics is very strong, because whatever is coming out from science and technology has implications for human welfare. It has implications for the environment. It has implications for other organisms that share a common environment with humanity. So the question of value, the question of morality, for me, is the center of gravity of everything we do as humans, whether scientific or technological or whatever the case might be. So that nexus must be there. And therefore, it is imperative that those in the field of science and technology, particularly in the biomedical sciences, sciences that relate with life, sciences that relate to organisms, must, I repeat, must be cognizant about what ethicists are saying about their practices, about their activities, about what they are developing in the laboratory.
Thank you so much, Prof. Now, Prof, in 1 minute, kindly explain the scope of bioethics and its distinction from medical ethics.
You see, bioethics is wider than medical ethics. Why do I say so? Because medicine, medical ethics, deals with ethical issues that arise in the practice of medicine. But who do you treat in the medical line? Human beings. Human beings are part of biological organisms. So that is why bioethics is wider. However, medical ethics is more restricted to the issues and problems and conflicts and paradoxes and ironies that arise as a result of the practice of medicine. Okay? Whereas bioethics goes beyond the practice of medicine to talk about the biotic environment, which includes plants, animals, viruses, bacteria, and also, of course, it talks about the health in biotics. It talks about the health of the environment. However, we should also recognize that some of these disciplinary boundaries are not rigid, they are fuzzy. There are areas where bioethics and medical ethics intersect. There are many areas. The issue, for example, of abortion, a bioethicist could be interested in it. Of course, a medical ethicist will also be interested in it, right? Then you talk about issues regarding the manufacture of drugs, for example. A bioethicist must be interested in it because in the manufacture of drugs, you deal with the environment, you deal with herbs, you deal with all kinds of things that the environment provides, even animals, using animals for experiments. These are issues that arise in medical ethics. But a bioethicist could also be interested in it. Why would we use other biological organisms as guinea pigs in developing medical cure for humans alone? Why? What justifies it? So you can see that you can create a distinction between medical ethics and bioethics, but remember that they intersect in numerous places. And that is why interdisciplinary studies is the way to go these days, because there's a recognition in scholarship that disciplines intersect. And in order to provide a robust solution to problems or robust solutions to problems that arise as human beings begin to interfere not only in themselves, but also in the larger environment, you will discover that insights from these different disciplines are required in order for a robust, workable, and serviceable solution to the hydra problems that arise to be available. You cannot operate in silos, in disciplinary silos. No, you cannot.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. On the concluding notes, do you think global bioethics point towards bioethics imperialism?
Well, you see, the word imperialism has a very negative connotation. And that is why when you bring it in an academic discourse that is not strictly about, for example, politics or economics, I feel a little squeamish. But the point remains that talking about bioethics, and you're talking about whether it has an imperialist aspect, right?
Yeah. from the global scale?
I don't quite understand what you mean by is being imperialistic. Are you saying, for example, that powerful nations are trying to impose
Their own
their
paradigms, yeah, to
yes,
other ones?
it is usual. That's the way the world history goes.
Yeah.
No matter how you see it, powerful nations have a tendency to impose their own principles,
Yeah.
their own standards, their own paradigms. But then again, there's also a recognition that for the world to move forward, nobody should be left behind. So both the powerful nations that are at the forefront of some of these cutting-edge researches and developing countries that are actually trying to also put their own ideas and culturally distilled insight into discussion. All these things, there should be a basket of theories and principles, both from the so-called powerful nations and from the so-called less powerful nations, because humanity, despite our cultural, religious, racial differences, humanity belongs to what? One family. And there is scientific evidence to show that all human beings are actually of the same stock. We are what? Homo sapiens. Therefore, the issue is this: insight from the powerful nations, insight from the less powerful nations. When we work, when the world, when human beings work cooperatively, collaboratively, we will now discover that better solutions to the world problems, especially as discussed within bioethics, will be easier.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof.